So, I had a couple coworkers who said, "Hey, you should do a podcast. You've got a good voice." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I have one." And then the people at my local Starbucks said, "Hey, you should do a podcast." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I have one." And today my chiropractor was like, "Hey, you've got a pretty good voice." And I was like, "Oh, here it comes." And I told him that I have a podcast. And at work, I was speaking to some members of the public, and they were like, "Hey, you have a really good voice. You should, do radio or something." And I was like, ah. So, here is another episode of the Ranger Gareth podcast. Brace yourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to another episode of the Ranger Gareth podcast, where we discuss nature news and interview some of the finest minds in the ecosphere. I'm Gareth, former park ranger and permanent conservationist. No guest today, but it is going to be a well-deserved, long-waited-for international and local nature news update. I'd like to thank our sponsors, if they existed. None so far, but I do want to thank the local Starbucks people and also the people at Kawa Raw Cafe for, I should be specific, the Albany Starbucks location, for letting me spend so much time in there. What am I doing there? I'm paying to be there. But I just want to say thanks to all the people that have been reminding me, hey, you should really be getting after some of this nature news stuff. It really lit a fire under my ass, and I am here to talk about some of the things that we have been missing over the last few years. Just a couple quick shout outs right at the start. Melissa Penny with Habitat Yeg just presented for Nature Alberta as part of their Nature Network speaker series, all about how to make your backyard an urban bird oasis. I recently had her on the show, I believe it was last October. So check out that episode. She was a fantastic guest. Also, Alberta outdoorsman Scott Sunderwald recently released a book, Radically Wild, True Tales of Adventure, Wilderness Survival, and Hard Lessons. I am always going to support my local outdoor artists and authors and presenters. So support some of your local outdoor enthusiasts. But to get international, oh god, I'm going to mispronounce this name horribly. I believe it's supposed to be Andre Bargiel, the brave Polish man who became the first person ever to summit Mount Everest and then ski down it. If anybody wants to watch that video, it's on the Red Bull channel. It was about 30 or 40 minutes. I watched the whole thing. It was unbelievable. I've only taken one glacier travel course in my life, but watching this man ski his way through the Khumbu icefall, seeing all of the numerous crevasses he could have fallen down, and ended the story somewhat prematurely. It was fascinating. When you see the aerial view from the drones and you can see all the crevasses, but then you see his helmet cam and how so many of the terrain features are just impossible to see until you're right on top of them. Terrifying. Also, for anyone that is not aware, Hokkaido in Japan has had an absurd amount of bear attacks over the last year. In 2025, the record number of bear attacks occurred, with some 235 incidents resulting in 13 deaths. There was a hiker killed by a brown bear in August 2025. Some of these bears have been showing very unusual behavior. I have not had the privilege of going to Japan yet. I would love to one day. And Hokkaido is high on my list, especially because I believe that's where Sapporo is brewed. Sapporo? Great beer. I'm a big fan of Japanese beer. Asahi as well. Fantastic stuff. But people are wondering, why is Japan, of all places, becoming the epicenter for global bear attacks? A lot of people probably think, the mountains, the Rockies, Western Canada, Western United States, maybe even far off Russia. But Hokkaido, people don't often think of that as having a bear problem. Some of the possible suggested causes, climate change and food scarcity, so insufficient food in the forest, possibly pushing bears into more populated areas. There have been bears sighted in urban town centers. Rural depopulation is also quite an issue. For anyone that's been paying attention, Japan's birth rate has plummeted, and there is a greater trend towards urbanization. So a lot of the areas that used to be more heavily populated by people, a lot of the villages, rural areas, farms are being abandoned, and as a result, bears are more exposed to formerly human habitat as they move back into their old locations. So it is kind of surprising, but yeah, Hokkaido, not the best place to be right now. I still want to go so bad. If anybody has any good suggestions for northern Japan excursions, please let me know in the comments or just message me. For something a little more local, we have some good news. Kootenay National Park survey shows record number of endangered bird species. For anyone that's been following bird news, I know that is probably a limited subset of people, but in Kootenay National Park, we now have a record number of black swifts, which are endangered. There are certain areas that get shut down in the parks to preserve black swift nesting sites. I believe a chunk of Marble Canyon might have been closed off. But they are doing much better. So the bird survey in 2025 showed that there were 26 birds recorded at Marble Canyon, which is the most ever seen in the park. They are migratory, so they move around a lot. But cool, moist areas such as the steep canyon walls in Marble Canyon are ideal for them to build their nest. Anyone that has not been to Marble Canyon as well, by the way, go. It is amazing. It is beautiful. The views down there are stunning. Not a lot for accommodations in Kootenay National Park, but Kootenay Park Lodge right in the middle of the park. Somewhat expensive, somewhat rustic, but stay there at least once. It is amazing. But getting back to the black swifts, they are monogamous, and females usually lay only one egg per season. So for their numbers to go back up, it's going to be a long process, but the best we can do is just support them and hope for the best. Somewhat more pessimistic news, but wolverine numbers in Banff, Yoho, and Kootenay National Parks declined by nearly half in the last decade. About 40% they're estimating in the last decade and a half. Scientists say research showed 34 wolverines were using the 3 national parks as part of their home range in 2011, which dropped to about 20 individuals in 2020, including 13 females. The 2024 estimate is about 18 wolverines in Banff, Yoho, and Kootenay, with 14 of those in Banff. That is not great. The population seems like it's stabilized, but the numbers are still low relative to historic numbers. It is quite hard to monitor wolverines because they have very large home ranges. They are wanderers. They are very elusive. So a lot of what's being done is DNA sampling of hair that is being found in the parks. There are also camera traps. There are little things called hair snags. Essentially, wolverine rubs up against it. We get a sample of the hair, run it through a DNA analysis. It'll give us an idea of how many different animals are out there. But not great news. There are certain species that I'm coming to realize are just much more susceptible or sensitive, to human influence. Wolverines being one of them, mountain caribou being another one. I know we spoke about it in a previous episode, but the Smoky River sub-regional plan up by Grand Cache, that's causing some concern amongst outdoor advocates just because of the fact that caribou are so incredibly sensitive to habitat fragmentation. So something that we would think is minor as humans, like a single logging road, could make quite a big impact on the species. So yeah, it is tough to balance outdoor recreation and economy and conservation. And that actually directly leads us into our next story. So there are activists who blockaded the road to halt logging in South Kananaskis. Now, this story came out back in October of 2025. I haven't heard many updates since then. I should probably look into that. But environmental activists last October constructed a log barricade in order to prevent logging in an area in South Kananaskis. So one logging company, West Fraser Cochrane, owns a large chunk of the land down by the Highwood River. Anyone that spends a lot of time in Kananaskis has probably also seen the signs for Spray Lakes sawmills. Kananaskis is an interesting region because it was meant to balance industrial activities, but also outdoor recreation. And it causes a lot of conflict when people who have gotten so used to using a certain area for mountain biking, fishing, bird watching, hiking, and suddenly being told, hey, you are no longer allowed to go there, even though you've been there for the last 20 or 30 years, because that is how long it took us to grow the trees up to a level where we're considering harvesting all of them again. But the activists said they're going to add their bodies to the stockade-like barrier blocking an industrial access road. In the Highwood River area, they're going to be harvesting the timber this winter, actually. It's currently February 5th, 2026, while I'm recording this, so they've probably already begun the harvesting. The reality is it would take them 20 minutes to remove that blockade, but at that time we'll man it with lots of humans to stop them from taking that down, said Mike Sawyer, founder of the group Defending the Eastern Slopes. Either we win or winter beats us up, but we've got lots of resolve. Nanton resident Sawyer says West Fraser constructed the bridge over the Highwood River 80 kilometers southwest of Calgary without a federal permit in 2023. The bridge was removed last year following objections by environmental groups. But earlier this month, Fisheries and Oceans Canada granted the company a permit to reinstall the span, despite environmentalists' claims that it poses a risk to endangered bull trout and violates the agency's own laws. On its website, the federal agency indicates its permit is for riparian vegetation removal at 14 temporary crossings for timber harvesting purposes extended to the end of 2028. Not only is it critical habitat, it's being used for bull trout for spawning. These are not hypotheticals. I have fished in that area unsuccessfully, but I know a lot of people say that it is prime bull trout habitat. And for a province that made the bull trout its provincial fish, we don't seem to care that much about it. I always find that strange when you take an animal, you make it your symbol, your national or provincial symbol, and then you treat it poorly. Another example was the bald eagle in the United States. It was the national bird, but it was also shot en masse in the early days because they believed it was a pest or it was going to attack sheep. And yeah, they decimated the bald eagle population in the in early American history. Finishing off with something closer to home. Pond in West Edmonton subject to second year of controversy over chemical invasive species removal. For anyone that's been listening to the show for a while, yes, it is the same pond. The pond in Guinevere Park. It has, oh goodness, any parents that are listening to this show, don't let your kids dump the family goldfish into the toilet or into the local pond in the hopes that it will live out a nice, happy, healthy life, because it might. And if it does live a nice, happy, healthy life, it decimates the ecosystem wherever it goes. So Guinevere Park Pond has shown goldfish or Prussian carp to be living there. They tried poisoning them the previous year with rotenone, which I believe kills all gilled animals. But EPCOR, which is in charge of managing all of the stormwater ponds around Edmonton, pulled out a 33 centimeter, 3-pound goldfish from Guinevere Pond in West Edmonton last year, so 2025. And if those fish were to get out into any of the surrounding areas, it's just bad. Anyone that fishes around Alberta knows that we're having issues with invasive species going all over the place. I believe it's Frank Lake, a popular bird sanctuary in southern Alberta, allegedly has a ton of Prussian carp. I know that people who fish around Alberta have found other areas where there are Prussian carp. We don't want those getting out. They eat everything. They're unfortunately very, very adaptable. They do well almost anywhere they go. But in the Guinevere Park Pond, so they applied the rotenone. They killed something like 3,300 pounds of Prussian carp and invasive goldfish last year, so 2024, but also 98,000 fathead minnows, which are not invasive. And that has led to understandably upset individuals who are saying this is an environmental disaster. It's a tough one because I don't like killing native species if we can avoid it. But this seems like one of those situations where the best solution is also not a very nice solution. But if we don't get rid of them, we are going to have a much, much bigger problem. If those got into the river system, I don't know if they already are, but if they do, it's going to be a nightmare. Oh god, I did not want to end this episode on a negative note. There are some great things happening in Edmonton. Silver Skate Festival is happening February 6th to 16th in Laurier Park, so anyone who's looking for something to do with their family or friends, go down there. You can park in the zoo parking lot. Transit, I believe, is supposed to be free, at least the route that takes you directly to that festival. But yeah, for anyone that wants to truly experience Edmonton as the amazing winter city that it is, get your butts down to Silver Skate Festival. And for anyone that is listening, thank you so much for making it to the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe, share it with your friends, and I will continue trying to give you the best local nature news I can. Adios.